Welcome to Module 6 of the Non-Residential Lighting Controls video series. In this module, we'll focus on demand-responsive lighting controls, including technologies, specific requirements, and relevant compliance documentation. In this module, we'll learn what demand response is and why it's important. We'll discuss the mandatory and prescriptive requirements related to demand-responsive controls, and we'll finish with a look at the forms needed to document compliance. Let's begin by covering what demand response in a demand-responsive control is. According to the U.S. Department of Energy, demand response provides an opportunity for consumers to play a significant role in the operation of the electric grid by reducing or shifting their electricity use during peak periods in response to time-based rates or other forms of financial incentives. In California, many utilities offer automated demand response programs to their customers. In order to participate in these programs, demand-responsive controls must be installed in the customer's building. Lighting is a great system to use for demand response. Since demand response reductions are short in duration, but usually come during peak day business hours, reducing lighting load to meet demand response goals has minimal impact on business operations. Now let's discuss the mandatory requirements that apply to demand response. Demand-responsive controls are required for certain buildings under the 2016 Building Energy Efficiency Standards. By requiring these controls, building owners are more easily able to participate in demand response programs and help California shed load during critical periods. New buildings and building additions over 10,000 square feet must include demand-responsive controls. Lighting alterations of greater than 10,000 square feet that result in a lighting power density greater than 85% of that allowed under the area category method, section 140.6C2, and which change the area of the space or change the occupancy type of the space or increases the lighting power must also install demand-responsive controls. Spaces with a lighting power density of 0.5 watts per square foot or less are not counted toward the 10,000 square foot threshold. The energy use of these spaces is already low, so additional demand response reductions may result in overall little savings and subpar lighting conditions. Demand responsive controls and equipment must be capable of receiving and automatically responding to at least one standards-based messaging protocol. In California, the messaging protocol most often required by utility demand response programs is OpenADR. More information on OpenADR is offered by the Demand Response Research Center. Their website is drrc.lbl.gov. The demand responsive controls must reduce the total lighting power of all non-excluded spaces by at least 15% when a demand response signal is received. Under the standards, reductions cannot exceed 50% of full output. Lighting must be reduced in a manner consistent with uniform level of illumination requirements in Table 130.1-A of the Energy Standards. To satisfy this requirement, the power must be reduced in each luminaire within the enclosed space. Switching alternate luminaires is not allowed. Lighting not permitted by a health or life safety statute, ordinance, or regulation to be reduced should not be counted in the total lighting power. In addition to the mandatory requirements for demand response controls that we have discussed, there is one prescriptive option related to demand responsive controls. The use of demand responsive controls in buildings 10,000 square feet or smaller qualifies for a power adjustment factor, or PAF, if certain requirements are met. As we have discussed in other videos in this series, voluntary use of certain lighting controls that go beyond mandatory requirements can give designers and building owners some flexibility to install additional lighting in a space. For small buildings and alteration projects, the use of demand-responsive controls is such a case. To qualify for this PAF, demand-responsive controls must comply with the requirements detailed in Section 130.1E of the Energy Standards, which we just described. Luminaires equipped with demand-responsive controls installed to earn a PAF may also qualify for other PAFs, like institutional tuning, if those conditions are also sufficiently met. When all these conditions are met, the system qualifies for a PAF of 0.05. Details are provided in Table 140.6-A of the Energy Standards. Demand responsive controls must be documented on certificates of compliance, installation, and acceptance when used to comply with the Energy Standards. Form NRC-LTI-01-E is required for all buildings. This is the Certificate of Compliance for indoor lighting. NRC-LTI-02-E is used to document lighting controls installed to comply with the standards. Demand responsive controls must be noted in Table A and listed separately in Table B for both mandatory devices and controls qualifying for a PAF. Following installation, compliance is documented on Certificate of Installation NRCI-LTI-01-E. Details on installed shutoff controls must be provided on this form. In addition, if demand responsive controls are installed to qualify for a PAF, Certificate of Installation NRCI-LTI-05-E is required. The responsible party must certify that the controls are properly installed and meet all the requirements of the PAF. Acceptance testing is required for all demand responsive controls. Acceptance test results are documented on Certificate of Acceptance Form NRCA-LTI-04-A. However, for alterations, if controls are installed to control 20 or fewer luminaires for the entire project, acceptance testing is not required. Before we end this module, let's review what we've learned. We learned that demand response allows customers to play a significant role in the operation of the electric grid by reducing or shifting their electricity use during peak periods. Lighting can be easily reduced, often with minimal disruption during a demand response event. Under the Energy Standards, all new buildings, building additions, and some alterations greater than 10,000 square feet, excluding spaces with a lighting power density of 0.5 watts per square foot or less, must install demand-responsive lighting controls. Demand-responsive lighting controls must be able to automatically receive and transmit using at least one common standards-based messaging protocol. In response to a demand response signal, demand-responsive lighting controls must reduce the building's total lighting power by at least 15, but no more than 50% as compared to full output, excluding spaces with a lighting power density of 0.5 watts per square foot or less. A PAF is available for installing demand-responsive lighting controls in buildings 10,000 square feet or smaller when using the prescriptive approach for compliance with the Energy Standards, and demand-responsive lighting controls must be documented on certificates of compliance, installation, and acceptance. This concludes Module 6 of the Non-Residential Lighting Controls video series. For more information on non-residential lighting controls, please visit the Energy Commission website at energy.ca.gov/Title 24/2016 standards.